With New York Jets training camp underway, we've got actual football stuff to discuss here on JetNation Radio. We're going to talk about risers and fallers in camp, who's standing out, who's possibly on the way out, and a couple of transactions to discuss tonight. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. 3 of us together doesn't happen very often nowadays. Hopefully that will be changing in the coming weeks as real football that we can all watch and discuss is happening. Dylan Terman, Chris Schubert. How are we doing tonight, Chris?
Doing good, Glenn. Glad to see you're back. You've paid your fines, I hope, to the fine bucket as required by the JetNation CBA, and we have some training camp to discuss.
Yeah. What a nightmare. That was that's as much as we always come to the same spot every year in the summer. But the only downside is there's no Wi-Fi in the house. And, I'm not going to get into Brexit and what that did to everybody's access. But, we thought we had it figured out this year. We thought we're going to buy a huge bundle of a ton of Wi-Fi so we have no concerns. And we bought like 100 gigs to last us 2 weeks. And but when you first get here, they allow you to use 5 gigs of your UK plan. And that's what we were on when we were supposed to go live on day 3 or 4. And I go to log in, I had like a meg left and couldn't get onto the plan. So here I am.
Not as bad as the fines that Dylan had accrued during the show. So that's okay.
Wait, my 2 fines for being on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's tough because I was going to come in here and say I'm just here so I don't get fined because Commissioner Chris over here doling them out like it's nothing.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Glad to be here with all 3 of us. Obviously, we have live football on TV, Hall of Fame games. Really exciting to just see football back in action. So we have a lot to discuss.
I was thinking I might watch a little bit of that after this. And I know it's backups and guys who won't make rosters, but look, there's gonna be guys playing in that game who we watched in college and wanted to see what they would be like in the pros. So we'll see how that goes. How are we doing, Bernard? So first things first, earlier today, Tarik Cohen, running back, who was attempting a comeback after missing a couple of years due to injury. I wasn't sure I didn't like him to make the roster. Felt like the running back room was too crowded. But as you heard the Jets talk about him, and some of the early reports made it sound like he still had some explosiveness. Maybe he had a shot. Tells the Jets today he's retiring. Any thoughts on this from you guys? I don't think this has a huge impact on the running back room because he was on the bubble anyway. But he's a body who's gone. Doesn't mean anything for Izzy. I would love to think it does because I love Izzy, but I'm not sure because he's not seeing the ball at all. What are your thoughts here? Go ahead and kick it off, Dylan.
Yeah, my first thought was kind of the same. I was like, I don't think it moves the needle one way or the other for Izzy. Obviously, if they carry 4, then he's, probably going to be that 4th guy. But last week I said I wouldn't be surprised if they kept Tarik. Then you hear Salah's comments about he's shifty, but he doesn't have that long speed, or they're trying to get that long speed back in him, and then he just retires. So I don't know, maybe he just didn't see it as a fit with the Jets or whatever. So I was kind of, on the fence with him as far as if he stayed or if he went anyway. So I don't think it means anything for Izzy either, but the running back room seems pretty good without him. So.
Yeah, I think while I don't want to go to the other end of the extreme as you guys, I do think there being one less running back out there does at least do something for Izzy Abanikanda. Now, does it create an opportunity for him to all of a sudden pole vault into a position to make this roster? No, I don't think so. I've been firm on this, although I was also firm on Nick Bodden making the roster, and I didn't make it a week before that take aged very poorly. So these things are very fluid at this stage of the process. But again, there being less running backs on the team at this point, and Izzy being one of the guys that is still here, his odds are better than they were yesterday, but they're not incrementally better. It maybe went from a 5 to a 10% chance, right? It is a incremental increase, but it is not one that is going to make a major impact. I still think there are 3 guys in front of Izzy, and I don't see this team carrying 4 running backs.
Yeah, I think the only way they carry 4, we talk about this all the time, right? Or at least, it seems like around roster cut down time, I always bring up the point that teams will sometimes carry a guy. Last year was Justin Hardy, who was exclusively special teams, and that's all that guy does. Unless they have that vision for Isaiah Davis, which they may because they've talked him up so much as a special team. Like a potential special teams ace who they think they can play all over the place. If they view that as his role, then I can see them carrying 4. Otherwise, teams just don't carry 4 backs. You might stash them on the practice squad.
Here's where your point I think could create that to go from a 10% chance to being something substantial. Davis is a rookie, right? And if they are going to make him a special teams ace and they're going to use him all over the place, they might not also want to add to his plate, hey, you're going to be the third running back and you're also going to have to worry about that. And so
That's
Izzy
what I mean. Yeah.
is comfortable on the team, knows the offense. It's nothing new than it was last year. So he can be that veteran third option on the team. So that if that is the way that they are thinking internally, then I think this goes from a 10% chance to a really decent chance
absolutely.
that they carry 4 and Izzy gets touches. But again, has anybody, and I haven't, this is on me, I have not been up to date with Robert Saleh's everything he has said at every single media availability. Has anybody asked that question specifically? Because I wonder how he would answer it.
About
I've
Isaiah
not heard
Davis?
it asked.
I haven't heard.
I haven't heard it asked. What jumps out at me, and this is, of course, again, you're only going off of the people who were there. I've seen Izzy's name mentioned, I think, twice. I think on day 1, the fact he didn't get any touches or had 1 touch and did nothing. And then on day 2 or 3, he broke a 50-yarder. And that was the last time I heard his name. And we're now practice, 7? So I've heard one good thing about Izzy in 7 practices.
Yeah, my thing is, in the same light as like, does Isaiah Davis make it as like a core special teamer first, then a running back second? Does Izzy be looked at? Can he be looked at in that same light as like, I'm going to be a return man first, and then I'm going to be a running back second, maybe whether it's RB3 or RB4 on the team? I'm watching the Hall of Fame game right now, and both kickoffs I've seen, each team put 2 return men back there. So there's going to be opportunity for 2 people of the 53, probably 3 people of the 53-man roster who are going to be looked at as key return men specialists, because if they're going to run 2 every time and one of those guys is hurt, they're going to need another guy to step up. So I can see Izzy and Isaiah Davis both making the roster, and I think the chances of 4 running backs making it increases rather than 3.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with the kick return is that you're seeing, and a lot of teams doing it, you're seeing a lot more physical guys as return men. Whereas, in the past, it's like quick, explosive, scat guys. But now it's like they want the Malachi Corley, the Isaiah Davis, who, yeah, you can move a little bit, you can do, but you need to be able to run people over because it's going to be a lot of traffic in a hurry. But if you can get through, there's no third level of defense and you can take it to the house. So I don't know if Izzy fits what they're looking for anymore what anyone is looking for anymore back there. I could be wrong, though. They might go with one of each. You might see more of a traditional speed guy and someone who's got a mix of speed and power back there. But I think the kickoff thing is going to be a really interesting factor this season for a lot of teams. And you just hope, it's going to take time to adjust. You just hope that your team isn't the one that's the last one to get it. But with Brant Boyer on board, you would hope that's not the case.
Coming up under Westhoff, you would think he'd be pretty good at special teams and everything.
Exactly.
And they already have a good special teams unit as it is, so I feel like
right.
It's not going to be much of a drop off, if any.
That's the thing. There's the fear of the unknown, but I look at them like they've got this. This is something they've got to get situated early on. Another minor move, Chris. You mentioned Bawden leaving, of course. Anthony Ferkser, the former Jet, he was with the Jets back in 2017. He was in camp. I don't know if it was the last time I covered training camp, but one year that I was out at camp, Ferkser was there as a UDFA. Tight end, played 5 years with the Titans, a couple games with the Lions last year. More of a blocking H-back type. Lines up in line too, but lines up on a couple different spots. So he has a chance to win that spot from Bawden. Any thoughts on him, guys?
Just another addition to the room. It feels like Sepsic could be another guy who could be looked at as the Bawden replacement. Obviously, we've been chiming for Ruckert to be the guy to just take the fullback snaps. So, I mean, they're adding a tight end type in Ferkser. He's not, I don't think he's going to be the Bawden replacement. So it makes sense that somebody's got to be that role if they're going to carry a guy to do it. And it's either going to be Ruckert or Sepsic at this point. Maybe they carry 3 tight ends, maybe 4 even, and the 4th guy is their H-back as well.
Anything that gets in the way of Jeremy Ruckert taking his rightful place as the H-back on this team, I have a problem with. And so this move absolutely is a roadblock. It is an impediment to Jeremy Ruckert going into the role that we all think he should be on this team for this season. Look, it just doesn't feel like it's something they're remotely interested in doing. They are trying every way possible to not put Ruckert into that role. I don't know why. I mean, you throw on the tape, the dude can play. The dude can do it. You need a guy in that role that is the bouncer and just takes people and moves them. Jeremy Ruckert does that. That's the one skill set he had when he got drafted. It was, okay, in the Ohio State offense, you're not asked to do a lot as a tight end other than being a good run blocker. You have some role in the offense. You have a couple of moments. That's the thing that you're going to have to develop at the next level. So to me, in an offense that has a lot of other options, where you don't need Jeremy Ruckert to go out there and be awesome as a pass catcher and be awesome as an offensive weapon. You need him to go out there and move people out of the way, get him on the field, get him those reps, get him that opportunity. And it just doesn't feel like they want to do that. So it is a little concerning. He's one of the guys that the moment they drafted him, I was super excited about the role that I thought he could play on this team. We've never really gotten it. It's a little frustrating, but we'll see. Again, I think getting caught up in the day-to-day movement of guys in and out of the roster at this point of the process is going a little too far. Let's see what it looks like when the final 53 is put together. But yeah, it doesn't seem good for the get Jeremy Ruckert more snaps campaign that we have been echoing for 2 years now.
Yeah, and little moves like this, it just makes it that much easier to say we're making the right decision and waiting in our 53-man roster predictions, because who the hell is going to be H-back? No Baldwin, obviously. Like, we want it to be Ruckert. So a lot of things are up in the air still with this roster, but that 53-man is going to be coming. I mean, we're a week and a half away from preseason action. That's great.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier in the week. We thought about a 53 tonight, and I know everyone wants to be first and everyone wants to get content out and everyone loves the 53 stuff, but for me personally, I just I got to watch one game. I got to see something football related before I go predicting. I'm going to predict the guy's making a roster because of a tweet that a reporter sent 3 weeks ago. Like, I think it's best if we see somebody play some football. You mentioned Lincoln Sefcik, Dylan. For those of you not familiar with him, he's the UDFA out of South Alabama. I fired off a couple tweets about him after the Jets signed him. Looks like, and I actually, as I was saying to you guys before we went live, I looked up Sefcik's background, watched him play a couple games, thought that this guy, as a blocker, he's so physical, he's so technical, uses leverage. I thought this guy, I bet he's got a wrestling background. Looked him up, looked up his background. Of course, he does have a wrestling background. He can definitely block. He's more athletic than I expected him to be. He can move with the ball in his hands. Now, the funny thing is, we've not heard, or at least I've not heard or seen anything about him making plays. But interesting note the other day, for those of you familiar, of course, with Robbie Sabo, who covers the Jets, tweeted out a couple days before Baldwin was activated. Didn't give any specifics on what was standing out about Sefcik, but said, if I'm Nick Baldwin, I'm getting back as quickly as possible because there might be something with this Lincoln Sefcik kid. And I was thrilled to hear that because, again, having watched him after they picked him up, I thought the same thing. I thought this kid, he can definitely block. Again, like I said, definitely understands leverage, does a nice job with the ball in his hands, tough to bring down. Again, small school guy, South Alabama. But he could be an option. But and you hit the nail on the head with Ruckert, Grace. I mean, they're consciously trying. It's like they get a bonus for every snap Ruckert doesn't play. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
They are the guys that, when they're doing the construction on the highway that are putting out the cones. The Jets are purposely putting cones in their own way. They're just like, you know what? We'll just put just a couple here, and it just blocks Jeremy Ruckert's path to the role we all want him to play. He's got to go on a detour. And the worst part is we're not doing any construction. We're just purposely blocking off the exit ramp. Like, Jeremy Ruckert's at the exit ramp, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to get off the highway. But the Jets are like, no, you got to go to the next exit. And then he gets to the next exit, and there's more traffic cones. It's like, guys, what are we doing here? Like, this is a guy whose one strength, the reason why he was not a top-viewed tight end in that class was he's kind of a run blocker. He doesn't have the pass-catching skills. He wasn't asked to do that at Ohio State. That's why he fell to where the Jets were able to get him. Well, guess what? The role that we are talking about putting him in is the thing he excels at.
And we've seen him do it and do it very well.
Right. And
this
is
not capable, not he's okay, but like we saw him do it one game as a rookie, and you're like, oh, well, there's his new job.
And even at Ohio State, it was like we were calling for him to get more game or more like play in the pass game because
Yep.
all we saw was blocking reps on his film. And it's like, great, we know he can block. We're check that box, move on. Let's see him catch. And then, he has the nice catch in the back of the end zone. And then you're like, okay, maybe he can catch if given the opportunity. But he came from a blocking tight end / H-back to now a hopefully full, type tight end. But because we need to spend 8 minutes talking about fullbacks, Hawk had a question and said, any chance Braylon Allen does any fullback duties? I wouldn't be surprised if either running back is in. I wouldn't call them fullbacks, but like if you have Braylon Allen blocking for Breece Hall in the backfield or Isaiah Davis, like I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like they're going to try to get creative. They have good enough depth at this running back room that they need to get creative.
But again,
Yeah,
why?
sorry,
Wait,
go ahead, Chris.
but why? Why get creative? Why? We don't. This is square peg round hole. I have the answer. His name is Jeremy Ruckert. Like I don't understand.
No. I'm not. Yeah, of course. I'm just saying you have the personnel now to get creative.
That's not what you want, Chris. But it looks like it's what they're doing. Is that they're electing Ruckert as a blocker, which is silly. But,
and this is where I'm going to take Hawk's question, and then also NJ Lawrence had a couple of comments about this. This is where the coaching staff scares me a little bit because these are easy things. These are not things that it takes, multiple in-depth looks at film to be able to figure out. We all see it. This was all the stuff we've been talking about before the beginning of last season. And here's the thing I would say to Hawk's question. When you draft somebody outside of, let's say, the top 75 picks, there is something about their game or some things about their game that you don't necessarily like, and it means they're an incomplete player. And to me, I worry about asking a player to do too much in their rookie season. When you're a top 75 pick, I can throw a lot at you, right? If you're a first or second round pick, I can more often than not throw a lot at you as a rookie. Right? If you're taken in the top 25 and you're an offensive lineman, I'm going to ask you to learn a lot to be my starting left tackle. And I'm comfortable with that because of where I took you. If you fall and you slip, one of the reasons why is because there's probably multiple holes in your game or you're an incomplete player. And I don't want to take those players and say, hey, kid, here's 50,000 things to learn and go out there and be productive for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl. It's just, to me, you're setting up a kid for failure when you have a solution on the roster. Also, even if it's not Jeremy Ruckert, you had a solution on the roster in Nick Bowden, who you just cut. So I don't get it.
Yep.
Yeah, but with Hawk's question, I could see either of them. After they drafted Isaiah Davis, and I didn't love the pick because I didn't like taking two running backs. I felt like they were linemen they could have grabbed in that spot. But I went back and watched them, and they used him as a lead blocker a lot. When on their quarterback draws and their RPO stuff, where Isaiah Davis would fake taking the handoff and then run up the middle and take out a linebacker. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, maybe they envision this guy getting snaps at fullback. Like you can look at Davis and Allen and say you could put those two on the field together because they're both physical enough to do it. So I wouldn't rule anything out. But to Chris's point, how much do you want to put on their plate early on? I think they both have the physical ability to do it. It's whether or not the Jets ask them to. Bernard wants to know
some tweets from. I saw some tweets from camp saying that both of them are getting a lot of work in the pass game as well as in pass protection. So those are the key places where Izzy Abanikanda was supposed to, improve on to make the team or, become a second string running back. So these are the things that these guys are already hopefully excelling at. So pass blocking and goes in hand with, tight end and fullback usage. So.
Yeah,
just get creative. I know it's like hard for Nate Hackett to like get creative or for us to get behind the idea of Nate Hackett getting creative, but I don't know. There was a clip that the Jets put on their social media and it didn't have Breece Hall, and their 5 skill position players were actually like a creative group of players. And I tweeted about it. I forget who it was, but they made it work. And I feel like they have the ability to do it now with the amount of personnel depth that they have.
Well, speaking of getting creative, let's really get into the what we're hearing, what we're reading, what we're seeing in training camp. Malachi Corley, rookie wide receiver out of Western Kentucky. Didn't hear his name a whole lot the first few days, but what we did hear was complimentary. It's, some folks thought his route running had improved because that is an area, obviously, pre-draft. We discussed that was something for him to work on. But now Xavier Gipson missing some time with a lower leg injury. He's going to be out a couple weeks. Corley, there was a very significant effort to get him the football the other day in practice, moving him all over the place. They used him on end arounds. They used him outside. He ends up scoring 3-4 touchdowns and kind of, has his first day where it's like, oh, look, maybe this kid can play. The number of people I've seen, by the way, sort of write him off as like, oh, he's not going to play this year. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, again, I don't get it. I think, look, sometimes people don't like picks and they just want to trash as much as they can. No logic to that, to say Malachi Corley won't play this year. He is absolutely going to play this year. And the other day, he played at a very high level. So how are we feeling about that?
I'm in. I'm in on this kid. I was in on him from the get-go. He has showcased all of the things that I think this team likes from him. And yes, there are stumbling blocks. He's a rookie. He's learning. And not to compare him to other teams, and it's one rep that's taken out of context, but I spent my entire morning watching people freak out over Xavier Worthy getting smushed twice on a press route in Chiefs camp. You can take anything and turn it into something, right? We're doing this with the Aaron Rodgers stuff, which I hope we get to at some point because I'm going to go off on people about this Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson nonsense that's occurred over the last couple of days. But you're going to have bumps in the road. Like no rookie. I don't care who they are. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a number 4. You're going to have moments where you go, oh, this is different than college, and you make a mistake. You're learning. You're a rookie. There are going to be things that you do that aren't going to be perfect. Even more so when you're not a first-round pick, when you're a third-round pick. There's a reason you slipped to the third round. You are going to make mistakes. That's okay. You are learning. And I think when push comes to shove, the Jets envision this going, I think, this way. Garrett Wilson's option number 1. Mike Williams is option number 2. And some combination of Allen Lazard and Malachi Corley are options 3 and 4. And that's a nice role for a rookie player in this wide receiver group. That's a nice place to be. But to think that he's just going to ride the bench, I just, you're not watching the same team that I'm watching. You haven't seen the moves in the offseason the way we've all seen them. You're just what you had a different offseason experience than the three of us did. If you think that Malachi Corley, did you see the Hard Knocks clip of the Jets? We just randomly learned this week that the Jets were trying to trade up to 6. Do you think that was for happenstance? Do you think that was just to get another offensive lineman? No, they were trying to trade up to get one of the receivers. That's what they were trying to do because they understood it was a need. So then they got a guy in the draft. Guess what? He's going to play. That's how this is going to work.
Yeah, I mean,
he's absolutely going to see the field.
I've been the Malachi Corley, fanboy since day one, probably since way back at Senior Bowl when Glenn and I were watching him. I even looked back at my notes the other day and I saw, I think it was day 2, I wrote him down as a standout. And I know we talked about him when we were down in Mobile. So I've been the Corley guy. It was nice to see him, getting in the end zone. Obviously, he had the touchdown with Rodgers. Then he had a nice pass from Tyrod Taylor. He even got a pass from Peasley and then the end around. So 4 total touchdowns for him. It's like a little coming out party at practice. They posted 2 of his touchdowns so far. They're both very acrobatic catches. One in the back of the end zone or side of the end zone, and then one on the sideline. Just like barely gets that second toe down as he's falling away out of bounds. So he's
from the previous day, right?
Yeah, not from the same day, but yeah,
still
one after another, which is great. You're seeing the consistency show up at practice. There's even the still, I think they posted a photo of Rodgers like giving him the finger point, and Rodgers, he's going to take a liking to Malachi Corley if that's the type of things that he's doing, and those are the type of ways that they're going to get him open because Rodgers likes to throw it short behind the line of scrimmage and deep down the field on the outsides. And that's kind of going to be Malachi Corley's game. So I've said it before, maybe he's even wide receiver 2 at the end of the year, depending on how much time Mike Williams does miss. So I'm all for Malachi Corley playing way more than Xavier Gipson. That rumor for like 2 weeks that Gipson was going to start at slot, I didn't buy that for 1 second.
Yeah, I thought if he did, it would be one of those things where the experienced guy gets 2 or 3 weeks, and then by week 3 or 4, he's supplanted. And really, listen, it's not like Xavier Gipson is a 4 or 5 year vet who's done a ton for this team that the coaching staff says we gotta usher him out respectfully. But no, he had a nice year, and I like him as a player, and I think he can still contribute. But Corley is the far better player. That's why he was drafted where he was. And even if he's got to refine his route running or whatever holes may exist in his game, the things he does well are things that he should be asked to do right away. And I'm looking at the chat here, and Bernard says, he mentions Joe Tippmann snaps. Something Joe Tippmann's being asked to do right away is start snapping to the right spot. Any worries about this, Chris?
Yeah, this is a problem. This is a concern. This is something that was a problem last year, and it has bled into this offseason. Do I think it will get resolved before the season starts? I do. But it is not good when the main takeaway from all of the people that are there covering this team is Joe Tippmann was bad snapping the ball. Like, there's nothing else that permeates to the top of the list other than that. Yes, it's a problem. And listen, this is a kid who is probably, he's got Tyron Smith he's working with. He's got Aaron Rodgers. There's a lot of veteran presence. There's a lot of ego. And I don't mean that in a bad way. You have a lot of guys with championship aspirations. And when you are a kid that's being asked to snap to Aaron Rodgers, I can understand maybe it taking you a little bit to get to that place of where you're comfortable working with Rodgers. We'll get there. If we get to the season and it's a problem, it's trouble, because I don't see a easy fix on this roster. The 53 is not designed with a true ready to go backup center on this team.
Schweitzer, I guess.
That's probably the guy you go to first, but I don't love that. That's not great.
No,
that's an option that probably gets Rodgers hurt, to be honest with you. Like, that's not a scenario that I think the Jets want to find themselves in throughout the course of the season. So yes, it's a concern. Yes, it's something to monitor, but like with a lot of these things, let's get closer to the season and see if it's still a problem. If we are week, the last preseason game, and we're still talking about this, then start to be concerned. But it's early in training camp. Everything gets blown out of proportion. Just relax a little bit.
Right now, what's the bigger issue? Joe Tippmann not being able to snap correctly, or Hassan Reddick not being at one Jets drive?
Reddick.
Tippmann.
All right, because people seem to think that it's Tippmann. The way that I look on Twitter and I see the sky is falling over this stuff. Yes, it is a concern, but like Chris said, it's only a problem if we get deep into August and against the Commanders and the Panthers and the Giants. Like, you're having these problems. I mean, Tippmann's a 6'6" center, and he's had both labrums repaired surgically. So like, not saying he can't do it, but like, he might have some issues and he might just have to readjust his stance. And obviously Rodgers is going to lay into him, but he even said in his presser about him, he's like, if Joe Tippmann is going to be an all-pro, which they think that Joe Tippmann could be an all-pro, then he can handle, Rodgers getting on him about the snaps. So I'm concerned. I'm not terribly concerned, but it is, it's a bit of an issue because he's supposed to be, the long-term answer at center.
Yeah, I think the concern with Reddick for me, and Chris, I think you said it. I think it may have been a night where it wasn't all three of us. But I put on I put it in the initial 90-man roster that I put out, that Reddick, I wasn't worried about the Reddick holdout unless it went beyond a week, because that's when you start getting into guys aren't just missing camp, but now you're missing full speed padded practices. And when you come in 2 weeks, 3 weeks late, do you push a little too hard, too quickly, trying to get caught up with your teammates and end up getting yourself on the shelf? We saw it with Revis years ago. Of course, we all remember that. And so once that first padded practice hit and there was no word of even a possible resolution, I thought, okay, now you're entering dangerous territory, because when this guy comes in, he's going to be behind. They can say all the nice things they want about him. They can say, we're sure he's preparing the way they did in the offseason, but there's no preparation for playing football other than playing football. So whatever he's doing might be staying in shape, but unless he's got some NFL buddies over at his house and they're going full speed, he's going to be behind when he shows up to camp. I think it's now, again, I'm not saying he won't be good or he won't be ready. My concern lies in one guy practicing with 80-plus guys who are full tilt ready to go while he's trying to ramp up.
So I get it. I understand the concern. But to me, I think it's much easier to look at this and say, I trust Hassan Reddick that even if he shows up late and he is 75% of the version of Hassan Reddick that we think he can be, I'm less concerned about that than I am second-year player Joe Tippmann having snapping problems. Right? That's the way I look at it. Like, if Hassan Reddick showed up to camp tomorrow, we're probably at the beginning of the season getting 80 to 85% of Hassan Reddick. Okay, great. Like, I don't worry about that. That's not a concern. What is a concern is Joe Tippmann snapping the ball into Aaron Rodgers' foot or throwing it over his head. That's a problem. And so even if we get to 3 days before the season, 50%, 45% Hassan Reddick, again, that's a player that's good. That's a player that can help. Joe Tippmann still having these problems the closer we get to the season, it could spiral the offense. The offense might not get out of first gear. So that's where it becomes a bigger problem for me. And again, I still think Hassan Reddick's going to show up, and it's going to be much ado about nothing. Same thing. I think the Joe Tippmann snapping stuff's going to just solve itself over the course of the next couple of weeks, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, my only issue with the Reddick thing is, like, at this point, like Glenn said, you're missing time with pads on when everybody else has ramped up slowly throughout the offseason program. Are you, like, going to have to play a little bit more in the preseason? And I know players that are in contract years that are of higher caliber like he is, they don't like playing in the preseason. So that might be another, hot button issue that once he is here, if he's not fully ramped up for the regular season, and like you say, Chris, he's maybe at 75%, but playing a little bit of the preseason can get him to 80 to 85%. Is it worth starting the season at 75 or getting him that little bit of extra game time? And that might be just another issue if he doesn't want to get paid, or if he wants to get paid but doesn't want to play preseason.
Here's another way. While you were talking, I thought of another way to look at it. Hassan Reddick doesn't play week 1. I still think the Jets defense is good enough. Joe Tippmann has snapping problems week 1. We got problems.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so that's another way to look at it, right? If Hassan Reddick doesnn play, I still think the defense is good enough for the Jets to win football games. If Joe Tippmann's snapping problems bleed into the season, the DEFCON lights are going to be going off. We got problems.
And as Hawk just said, I almost threw this out there. As you guys were saying, if Tippmann doesn't get this fixed, I was about to say, when I mentioned Schweitzer, you call McGovern if he's still out there.
Is our old friend still available? Does he still want to play football?
And the fact
he started
that
the season last year center.
Yeah, if he's out there, it is surprising that he's not here, being that they're at the point they're at. And things are going the way they are. I mean, we all like that this O-line has a lot more depth than it did last year. That was Joe Douglas. Probably his top priority was get this line to where it's 8 or 9 deep, and they may be in a spot where it is. Adding McGovern would not be a bad idea. But as Hawk says, he's angry that he's not here. I'm more surprised than anything because there are some guys on the roster who, we can look at and say, that guy's got a shot to make it, or this guy, a Hansen or, Xavier Newman or whoever, whereas McGovern would be sort of a lock to make it, proven veteran, but he's still out there. So that, Lauren said she thinks they'll sign him. They may, but it's a little bit surprising they haven't done that already, again, without a proven vet backup.
Okay. I just did some very, very quick research. So if this is wrong, blame Dylan. But these are the available free agent centers, okay? And Corey Linsley's at the top of this list. I know he retired, so I know he doesn't count. But the rest of these, I have not been able to independently check. Connor Williams.
Yes.
Scott Quessenberry. Connor McGovern. Pat Eflin. I mean, I just named 4 guys that have NFL center experience that they could just grab off the street at this point if things get bad. So there isn't really a rush. Because the last thing you want to do, and this is where I would counter with what NJ, Lauren, and Hawk have been talking about. If they, tonight, sign Connor McGovern, you absolutely torpedo the confidence of Joe Tippmann. So you can't do that. You have to give him the longest runway possible, and knowing that all it takes is you take your phone out of your pocket and you make one phone call to one of these 4 guys, and you're ready to go. But when you make that phone call, you are admitting we're probably not playing Joe Tippmann to start the year, and I don't think the Jets are at that place yet. And so that's why you are not seeing a Connor McGovern, a Connor Williams, a Mason Cole, a Pat Eflin, a Scott Quessenberry, any of these guys being called in, because I think the moment you do that, you probably make what is a right now 3 or 4 out of 10 problem a 6 or 7 out of 10 just by bringing in competition.
How many preseason games of Tippmann do you need to see before you call McGovern? Because obviously Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play against the Commanders or the Panthers most likely. And Tyrod Taylor, we still don't know what his role is going to be in the preseason. So he might be playing with guys like Andrew Peasley. So do we want to see him at least 1 game before we call McGovern, or do we give him 2?
I'd give him a game or 2.
I was going to say 2, but that was with my mind thinking there's 4. But now that there's only 3, I think 1.
Sorry. Yeah, my thinking is you play 1 game. If he has any snap issues at all, with regardless of who the quarterback is, you can call McGovern, get him in the week of the Panthers game, Rodgers doesn't play the Panthers game. Maybe McGovern doesn't either. So Tippmann does get that second chance. And then you have both of them, and McGovern can start possibly even with the ones with Rodgers in that series or two with the Giants. Or you can do Tippmann for one, McGovern for one, and then you kind of have a competition, because whoever's going to start at week 1 under center probably has to play those preseason snaps with Rodgers under center. So that's just my thinking about it. So I give him 1 game.
Can you put up Hawk's latest comment?
I was just going to put that up.
You're right, Hawk. That's not how it's interpreted. Because the moment Connor McGovern gets signed, the questions will get asked to Robert Saleh. Is this a competition? Is this a problem? Is this an issue? Are you considering making a change? What is Joe? The questions will be. They're asking him he has said, he is point blank. Can you go big screen on me just for 2 seconds so I can role play as Robert Saleh? Is that possible? Are we able to do that here on the show? Because this guy looks into every day, walks up to the podium, and he lies.
That's Dylan.
Dylan could do it.
Yeah,
that's still Dylan.
I can't do it right.
That's fine. He looks. Oh, you know what, Dylan? Put yourself full screen, and I'll just talk. Well, that's how we'll do.
No,
it.
you got
there
it.
we go. Perfect. He goes up to the podium every single day, and the media looks at him and asks him about Hassan Reddick every single day. He has the same amount of information that he had the day prior, and every single day he goes, "I got no more information. You know what I do." It's same thing over and over and over again. You don't think if after the overwhelming conversation has been about Joe Tippmann snap problems every single day, that the moment they bring in anybody that is a warm body that could play center, and especially in the case of Connor McGovern, who has played center for this team recently, you don't think those questions are going to be asked over and over and over again? And the moment that Joe Tippmann slips up in a practice after McGovern is here, the next day at practice, they're not going to be asking these same questions over and over and over again. That's why you can't do it. Not because you're worried that Connor McGovern is going to come in and all of a sudden be better than Joe Tippmann and you're going to make a change. Because if you believe in Joe Tippmann and you want him to be the starting center, if you make that type of move, you have to be very sure that you are ready to make a change at center. Because I think the moment you do that, the moment you make that signing, it is going to open the floodgates for a massive conversation.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget the human element of it all. And it's not just like Madden where you can just sign a guy, go into your depth chart, put him from 2 to 1, and no feelings are hurt.
No problems.
Like you're going to have that wears on a player mentally, and that might do more to him long-term to, create a competition that's might not even exist. Like you said, I don't think that he's the replacement for Tippmann, but at the same time, you bring him in too early and it shows that they don't have confidence in him.
And some guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to, because NJ Lawrence says they did the same thing with Zach Wilson. If you were going to attempt to compare what the New York Jets are doing with Joe Tippmann to how they handled the Zach Wilson situation, we're living in two different realities. Joe Tippmann didn't start as a rookie. He didn't play.
Yeah.
He sat on the bench. He watched. He didn't get in until late in the season. And so to compare it to Zach Wilson, I think is that's two different realities. That's not how it went down. They drafted this kid in the second round, and they said, you're going to be our long-term center. And by the end of the season, they threw him in there, and he was fine. He was serviceable. He wasn't bad, but those snapping issues were there. And now we get into this offseason. But here's the difference, because, Hawk says if he's that weak mentally, he's not the guy anyway. Yes, I agree with you. But don't arbitrarily force the issue when you don't need to force the issue. You don't need to force the issue on August 1st. If he stinks in the first preseason game, then yeah, you'll force the issue. But don't just do it just for the sake of doing it. Give Joe Tippmann the time. Give him the opportunity. He's a second-year player who played in a couple of games at the end of last season. He didn't get to work with Aaron Rodgers. He's learning. Allow him the opportunity to learn without all of the noise around him that would be drummed up. And the difference is they shouldn't. When they had Zach Wilson, they should have had a competition from the get-go, right? They should have immediately had a competition. You now have given Joe Tippmann the reins after one season. If you now, for what is seemingly no reason at this point, because he hasn't done anything, create a competition, you've now added issues that don't need to exist right now. So again, I get it. And yes, we should be having a conversation if this continues and in a preseason game, he is bad. But don't force a competition where there doesn't need to be one. Joe Tippmann is a good football player. He's just going through some struggles right now. Give him the opportunity to work through those struggles without adding extra noise around it.
Yeah, and I know this happens from time to time. It's, I've done it many times when the season is starting, forgetting about the previous year. But he started 14 games, Chris. He wasn't an end of the year guy, just to clear that up before.
Right.
because someone in the chat will jump in. He did. I know I often, when we're talking preseason, I forget exactly sometimes how things unfolded. But yeah, he sat the first couple weeks. By week 3, he was starting, and he started the rest of the way. But everything else, I think you're spot on. Wanted to change gears a little bit. We've talked a lot of offense, but wanted to switch it up to defense because one really encouraging development, and I'm trying to sort of pump the brakes and not get too excited about it because it's practice. Some of it's unpadded. But some of the bigger questions the Jets had this year was their depth at defensive tackle. And the Javon Kinlaw deal, I didn't hate signing him. I thought they gave him a little too much money for a guy who hadn't done as much as was advertised when he was drafted. Lecky Fotu was a guy who I thought good space heater, held guys up at the point of attack, but not really a playmaker per se. But those two guys, along with Takk McKinley, another former first-round draft pick, both he and Kinlaw first-rounders, rave reviews at One Jets Drive. They're getting in the backfield. McKinley's got 1 million sacks. Lecky Fotu, I think, had 5 TFLs all year last year. He had 3 in the first 2 days of camp. Kinlaw, a big play the other day, deflecting a pass that was picked off, has added, he says 1 million pounds of muscle. And he's now 330, so a bit more stout to play on that interior. So I'm looking at these guys where I didn't expect much, and I thought there were still some questions, and there are still questions, but some very encouraging stuff up that from out of camp from that defensive line, especially those 2 guys on the interior. Any thoughts on any of these guys? Did again, I know it's early, but have you kind of changed any of your early thoughts to the signings to after what we're hearing now, Dylan?
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, I did Buffalo Jet Fans Monday show with him, and we did like a word association. We did 3 words for each position group, and when we got to defensive tackle and really defensive line as a whole, I said, who but Q? And I was like, who's going to be the guy that's going to step up next to Quinnen? And now it seems like there's a couple of answers that there could be. Kinlaw, I didn't realize he gained 35 pounds. He looked absolutely massive in his presser.
I thought he said 25, but I thought I saw a lot of reporters saying 35. I didn't mean to cut you off there. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Now he's up to 330 pounds. So like now you're closer to like Al Woods territory. Obviously Al Woods was different, but like you're getting up there in size. And he said that he wants to get better at beating double teams. That was where he felt like he was lacking. So honestly, it just felt like a lot of accountability in his press conference. So I'm super excited about him. I was excited about the signing. I didn't really care about the money. We're seeing it with contracts all over the place. Jordan Love is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. If people are just going to get paid a lot of money, and we kind of just have to get used to it. That's what the cap is doing right now in the NFL. So I wasn't really worried about that. Lecky, I didn't really have any thoughts about, but it seems like he is doing well. So for once, the Jets have a position group where their coaching staff gets the benefit of the doubt, and guys come here and have breakout seasons potentially, like a Takk McKinley. That guy, he could be edge 4 and like push Will McDonald for snaps in the regular season at this point, the way we're seeing tweets. So it's just nice and a little bit refreshing to see guys stepping up in a spot that we a couple weeks ago were saying could be really shallow as far as depth.
Yeah, I think Dylan, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, the excitement that we have because you have a coaching staff that clearly believes that they can get something out of these players that they didn't get in their previous stops. And if there is one side of the ball that I would trust the coaching staff to get the most out of a player, it would be the defensive side of the ball. I think the comparison that I made last week, I'll make it again this week. It's like when the Tampa Bay Rays want to acquire a player from a team. You're like, they're going to do something with that guy, and we're all going to be like, we should have known that they were going to be able to get the most out of this player. That's what I feel like the Jets defensive coaches have earned in terms of their reputation for being able to get more out of these guys. Will all of them pan out? No, I don't think so. And this all might fade back into, they'll regress back towards the mean, and this buzz that we have at the start of training camp will fade as the preseason goes on. But you can't help but get excited about the players that the Jets brought in to be depth, to be rotational pieces, to be on this defense, are showcasing that they might be able to thrive in this environment with this coaching staff. That should get you excited.
And I know it's not. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dylan.
I was just going to say, to keep going, like on the defensive side, players that we didn't think were going to be standing out so early, you could talk about Quantez Stiggers and everything that he's done, and the defensive backfield that we thought was only, a couple cornerbacks deep. We might have 5 legitimate cornerbacks two for, obviously Eccles and Stiggers are going to be your depth players, and Eccles could even be your backup slot, I believe. So it looks like you get the benefit of the doubt with the Tony Oden as well. So a lot of good coaching staff decisions and development on the defensive side for sure.
Yeah, Stiggers is one guy where, we do preface a lot of the stuff by saying we get that it's only camp. We get that it's only camp. I still think what he's doing is unbelievable. For him to go from where he was to where he is and standing out as one of the best players, I don't care if it's his training camp. This guy was in a video game league 2 years ago, and now he's in an NFL camp. Like, what he got, like 3-4 interceptions. What a story! I mean, all you want for this guy is to see him succeed and just add to this. What up to this point is like a storybook, sort of beginning to up to where we are now. We're not obviously not at the end. But yeah, every time I see that guy's name, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, he's another one I'm having to pump the brakes and be like, how much can you really expect from a guy who didn't play college football and was in a fan control league 2 years ago and had 1 year in the CFL? Like, that to me screams of like, this guy needs years of mentoring. And then he walks in week one and he's one of the best players on the field. It's like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going to happen with him this year, obviously, but great story up to this point.
Quietly, the whole rookie class is having a great camp.
A lot of these guys are. There's a lot of the frustrating thing, and I always talk about this when I covered camp, is that 90% of the time, it's so hard to see the offensive and defensive line. It's not hard; it's impossible. Other than the two guys on your side, like the tackle and the end on your side, you can see everyone else is a matchup. But unless someone is completely dominating to where they're getting immediate penetration or driving a guy into the offensive backfield or defensive backfield, like it's hard to get a read. So it's frustrating not to hear about some of the linemen, some of the UDFAs. I know I saw that, of course, Fashanu's been getting some run with the ones when Tyron Smith's out. Carter Warren got some run with the ones the other day when Smith was out. There's some UDFAs that I'd love to hear more about, but you just don't get that, which is, for me, that's why a big reason I look forward to the preseason to kind of get a feel for what these guys are doing. But I wanted to touch on one last thing before we wrap up, and it's not Jets related, it's NFL related, and it's sort of a little bit not really off topic, but we sort of sporadically see these stories that the league eventually wants to get to 18 games. Some people say they want to get to 20, like they want more games and more money, and but 18 right now is the current goal. And but the big thing is we keep hearing is player safety, and how do you on one hand say we're prioritizing player safety, but also we're adding more football games to the schedule. I had this conversation with somebody some time ago, and I love the idea, and I was curious what you guys thought, because we're such big fans of the draft and player development and guys getting on the field and seeing time to improve. And this is even before they went to 17. I was talking to someone about would they ever go to 18 or 20, and we were thinking, how do you do that and satisfy the players union and say we're not going to jeopardize player health, but we want to increase games? What if you added a couple roster spots and capped the number of games a guy can play at 16? So you have to play a backup at each spot a couple times a year. Like what that does for player development, it adds games, but it also the players union doesn't get to complain that you're putting more players' health in. Now, maybe it just starts, right? Because if you're a backup, like fine, you can add a couple games. You're only playing 15, 20 snaps a game. But for the guys who play 70, 80, 90% of the snaps, you cap the number of games they play. Like, do you guys see a path to the league getting to 18 games? And does something like that sound crazy? Or is it like, oh, look, here's a situation where, it's going to be harder on GMs. They're going to have more work to do. You're going to have to be deeper. But you can get guys on the field who otherwise maybe wouldn't get to see the field for a couple of years.
So we did not discuss this in the pre-show. So you are getting my natural reaction, and I'm trying to process what you have shared with me in real time. And I will tell you, I don't hate the idea on the surface, but I just worry about its implementation, because at the end of the day, you are saying that this would be the way to make the players' union happy. And I would retort that I think the players' union is going to be happy the moment that the NFL comes to them and shows them what the new TV deal is going to be with 18 games and how much more money the players are going to get and how much the cap's going to go up. And then it's going to be, unfortunately, and I don't agree with this, but this is what it's going to be. Player safety be damned. Like, we're going to talk about player safety, and we're going to talk about these things that we're doing, and we're going to kind of change some things on the margins, like the kickoffs, and we're going to kind of change things on the margins. But guess what? We still have Thursday Night Football. So you can't tell me that you care about player safety and continue to have Thursday Night Football. I'm sorry. I am never going to take you seriously when you utter the terms player safety, when you have teams playing on a Sunday and then they're going out there on a Thursday. Just not happening. I just, it's disingenuous, right? And so, to me, the players union is, I think, ultimately going to look at the new TV deal that this league is going to get. And it's going to be whatever number you think it is. You probably have an astronomical in your head. It's not going to be as much. It's going to be more than what you think it is. That's how big the next NFL streaming deal is going to be. And I say streaming deal on purpose because I do not think you're going to have a lot of this stuff be in the regular, TV apparatus in the way that it's been. So to me, again, Gunn, I love it. I think it's unique. I think it really puts an emphasis on general managers and coaching and player development and roster construction. And okay, we've got these extra roster spots. How do we want to do this? I love that because that's how I am. That's how baseball is for me. And I love baseball. So I love the way teams put rosters together. And so I would love that. There's also, a way, Glenn, where you expand the rosters to, let's say, maybe you make it 70 and you say you can activate 53, right? And so it's up to you. There's no limit on it, but it's up to you if you want to rotate through your 70 guys and you want to activate a certain 53 on a given basis, right? That would be an interesting wrinkle to it. So I love it. Or at least I like it. I like the idea of it. I just don't. We're just going to go to 18 games. We're going to cut down the preseason games. We're going to add an extra bye week, and then we're just going to move on with our lives. Like, that's what's going to happen here.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
Yeah, I think from a financial perspective, that's the only thing that is the positive out of everything. Player safety in the NFL is I'm doing something over here while simultaneously doing the complete opposite over here. I completely agree with the whole Thursday Night Football take. I would personally like to not see Thursday Night Football. And then I would be in favor. Like, if you're going to say, let's do 18 games, we'll add one more, but there's no more Thursday Night Football, which we know is not going to happen. That's something we can get on board for. You have to expand the rosters. If you add any more games, you have to incrementally expand the roster. 70 might be a good number because that's 17 more that you're carrying into a season. So that's basically your practice squad. So now you're saying your entire practice squad makes the team, and now you have another practice squad waiting in the wings. So your depth becomes substantially larger. So that's the only way I could see it being a thing. But eventually it's just going to happen. And the NFL offseason is going to be about 3 weeks long. And 1 week is going to be the draft. 1 week is going to be free agency. And the other week is going to be the Hall of Fame induction. And then we'll be back into the season.
Yeah, Hawk says you got to have 2 bye weeks. I think that's been talked about. I think I've seen people throw that around, like if it's going to go to 18, which does make a lot of sense, obviously. And I'm sure that's something that we'll see players demand. But yeah, look, cash is king, and that's what's going to dictate what happens there. Real quick before we go, though, actually, Chris, you said you wanted to touch on it. I put out a quick article just to kind of say people are being idiots. The Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, feud. If you've never, it's not even about football. Like, to me, if you've ever played a competitive sport past Little League.
You stole it. You just stole it. You stole the rant. Tell me you've never played any level of competitiveness in your life by telling me that you are upset with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. It means you've never done anything competitive in your life. I have best friends. I have people that are going to stand next to me when I get married. Do you know the arguments that me and those people have had playing video games, playing sports? You get into it with your friends when you're being competitive. That's how it works. And then you know what? You dap it up. You get excited because at the end of the day, you're still a team. You're still buddies. You're still friends. You move on. What are we doing here? This is ridiculous. It is absurd to all of a sudden make something out of nothing because it's Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson getting heated on the sideline. Tell me you've never done anything competitive in your life.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe the number of people that were like, "Oh, look at this feud. Look at Aaron Rodgers." No,
feud.
They're having an animated conversation because they're a combination of frustrated, excited, passionate. Like, that's what happens. And as you look. The craziest, most intense arguments I've ever had are with my best friends in the world because you can go places with them and they don't take it the wrong way and you can hash it out at the end and it's not a big deal.
Put up Hawk's comment. Put up Hawk's comment. It's so true. I was going to make I get more annoyed with my friends when we play Warzone together and we lose because I think somebody's done something stupid. We yell at each other. It's okay, and then we're fine. 2 seconds later, it's like, all right, where we're dropping for the next game. Like, what are we doing? And tell me you've never done anything competitive in your life. Holy Christmas.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened there. And they both went on Kay Adams and did interviews, Garrett and Aaron. And Aaron immediately said, he's like, that's a bunch of bullshit. He's like, I looked at Garrett and I said, the perception is not the reality. He's like, people are going to talk about what it looks like we're doing on the practice field. We know what we're doing on the practice field. So let's just keep doing what we're doing and push each other to be the greatest we can be. And that's basically what Garrett said too, is like, we're just trying to make each other better at the end of the day. Like, if he wants to get on me a little bit, that's good. I'm going to get on him a little bit. And Rodgers made a little comment about the small details with Garrett and how he has all the ability. So maybe there are a couple things here and there, spacing wise that Garrett still needs to, do in the Rodgers offense to make it, perfect and seamless. But those things, like watching him yell, I was getting excited. All the Dolphins fans in the, quote tweeting and in the comment section, like cheering it on and saying the sky is falling in New York. It's like, come on, I'm actually happy that this is happening and being caught on camera, because if we saw that on Hard Knocks last year, I would have been way fired up.
Gather around, everybody. Get real close. This is the third time I've been on the big screen tonight, but everybody gather around real close. Could you imagine if Zach Wilson tried to have that type of energy when he was the quarterback of this team? Could you imagine? No. The reason why you can't is because Aaron Rodgers has the cachet to be like that. He has the bona fides, okay? He has the background to be accountable and to ask his teammates to be accountable. Imagine the takes that people would have if Zach Wilson did that. They'd be like, oh, he's being a fake leader, being a fake tough guy, trying to excite. Oh, guess what? They got a real leader. They got a real tough guy. His name's Aaron Rodgers, okay? And he's expecting and he's demanding the most out of his teammates. If you don't like that, if you want to try to spin that into a negative, you know what? Find a new hobby. Find a new thing to enjoy in 2024. I saw it, and it happened twice, right? It happened on Saturday, and then it happened again on Tuesday, right? Okay, like I saw it, and I was like, "What? We're making a big deal out of this? This is being made a big deal out of?"
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think it resonates with people who kind of watch a little football, but don't, like you said, like as we've said, never competed at anything.
Anything.
Football's
not even
cool.
sports. Anything. They've never competed in their life at anything.
Yes, I mean anything. Yeah.
I have arguments over the dumbest things with the people that I love the dearest, because you're competitive, because you want to win the argument, you want to win whatever you're doing. Like, that's how life is. And so you get heated and you maybe say something and you're like, I shouldn't have said that. And you get heated about it, and then you just move on because you're teammates.
Yep.
Yeah. The guy who was voted the most motivational player on the roster, despite only playing 4 offensive snaps and, doing what he did with the whole team the rest of the season. I mean, that just speaks volumes. So even if it is slightly tough love, and like I said, the perception is not exactly what it is. If it looks like tough love, that means it's love. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. They dapped it up. They went back to practice, and Garrett Wilson caught 3 damn touchdowns in practice in the red zone. So do you
really think Aaron Rodgers is then going to be spiteful in the middle of a season when he's 41 years old and say, oh, remember that time Garrett Wilson and I got into an argument at training camp? I'm not going to throw him the ball while he's wide open here. Again, tell me you've never done anything competitive in your life.
Yeah, it's great. And I think back, I know this predates you guys, and it's not the Jets, it's the Giants. But when those old Giants teams in the late 80s, like Parcells and Sims or Parcells and Lawrence Taylor on the sidelines, scream at each other. And you would later in the year, you get the audio on NFL films, whatever. And they were not polite, happy, kind conversations. It was, what the hell are you doing right now? And nobody, they won a Super Bowl. Like, it's insane. It's insane that it would be reported that way. And
Tom Brady never yelled at a teammate?
Look at this. As I was saying that, big Islander fan, do you remember Parcells and Sims all the time? And
Tom Brady screams at his teammates, screams at them.
Yeah. I mean, it's baffling. Look, if you're not throwing punches, you know what I mean? If you're not, if you're like in game, if you're disrupting a guy's ability to do his job, like maybe we can talk about it, but that's not what's happening here. And even in a game, it can get heated, but as long as everyone can do their job, That's all that matters.
You know what it is? And here's what it is. And if this is what it is, then just own up to it. Say you don't like Aaron Rodgers. Say you don't want him to be the quarterback of your team, because that's what it is.
Yeah, that's
you are
all it
looking
is.
for every single. And again, is he perfect? No, he does some things that I think are just stupid sometimes, right? And we talk about it here on the show. But he's my quarterback, and I'm able to look at the good and the bad and say this is not one of the bad things, and this is probably one of the good things actually that Aaron Rodgers does. It's just, again, just come out in the open and say you don't like Aaron Rodgers. Because the moment you do that, fine, I can understand where you're coming from. You don't like him, so everything he does is going to bother you. But to take what is just competitiveness at its finest, there was a fight at Cowboys camp a couple days ago. Did anybody make a big deal out of the fight at Cowboys camp and say, "Oh my goodness, the team's in disarray. In disarray, they're fighting on the field"? No, this is what happens. There's a dust-up. I guarantee you. Again, gather around, everybody. This is some nice wisdom here. When the teams have the joint practices with other teams, there's going to be some fights that break out between the teams.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make a big deal about that. Oh, look at these. The teams can't control themselves. No,
it happened all last year too.
Ridiculous.
We saw Hard Knocks. Well, everybody but Chris saw
Pittsburgh had a big one today.
I see clips of Hard Knocks. I see what is needed to see from Hard Knocks without actually having to watch Hard Knocks. I have the hack for it. It's perfect.
Yeah. All right. I think that wraps this one up, fellas. Glad we could all, three of us, get in
on
here.
today's show. No fines.
That's the goal. I don't even know which day I'm driving back to England. I think I'm around this time next week. I'll have to look at my calendar. I think I'll be right here in the same place a week from now. So hopefully all three of us, hopefully some more stuff to talk about, and maybe go watch a little bit of second half preseason football. All right, with that, that'll wrap this one up. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check us out next week, and have a good one, Jets fans.